Hello everybody and welcome back to the Data Playbook. Today we have the Sunday pregame reviews, so let's get right into it. Next up, we have the Colts at the Steelers, where the Colts are favored on the money line with a spread of 3.5 and a total line of 50.5 points. Looking at the rankings real fast, you have the Colts with a really good offensive team, best at scoring in the league, 6th best at passing and rushing, and 5th best with the tight ends. Their defense falls a little flat with the passing, where they allow almost the most in the NFL, but they do stop their opponents from scoring pretty often. Over here with Pittsburgh, it's much worse, where the only good things they have are their scoring rank of 12 and their tight end rank of 8. Everything else is below average, and some of it's even the worst, like passing rank. They allow their opponents to pass all over them, and they're the worst at stopping any of it. They're also very bad at stopping their opponents from scoring, and they don't have much of a passing or rushing game to talk of. And they're in the bottom third of both the passing and rushing game. And here's your averages if you want to relate those to those numbers. For the quarterbacks, you have Daniel Jones and Aaron Rodgers. Daniel Jones has had an average of 20.3 fantasy points per game this season, and Aaron Rodgers has averaged 16.7. Daniel Jones has 3 passing interceptions this season with no other turnovers, and Aaron Rodgers has 5 interceptions this season with no other turnovers. And if we flip over to our averages, as well as take a look at the impact on the rushing game, with Daniel Jones getting 15.7% of the rushing carry share versus Aaron Rodgers over here, who gets a very small portion, probably about 4 or 5%. Our running backs for this game are Jonathan Taylor and Jalen Warden. Jonathan Taylor has been averaging a whopping 27.1 fantasy points per game, and Jalen Warden averaging 13.6 per game. With no other turnovers, we'll flip over the averages. And looking at their share of carries on their team, Jonathan Taylor gets a whopping almost 75% of the team's carries. That's only taken down because Daniel Jones gets that 15.7%, and Giddens as the backup gets just about 10%. That's a stark difference over here from Warren, who gets 52.8% of his team's carries. A lot more going to Gainwell over here. For your number one receivers, you have Michael Pittman and DK Metcalf, with Pittman getting 15.7 average fantasy points per game, and DK Metcalf right behind him with 14.7. There are no turnovers, so we'll just look at the averages and look at their team receiving share, with Michael Pittman getting 21.5% of his team's total receiving yards, and DK Metcalf getting 30.7% of his team's total receiving yards. That's the largest over here for DK Metcalf, but for Michael Pittman, he's actually beat out over here, which looks like maybe Tyler Warren's beaten him out, but we'll look at that whenever we get to the tight ends. Looking at the number 2 receivers, you have Alex Pierce and Calvin Austin. Alec has 9.4 average fantasy points per game this season. Alec has an average of 9.4 average fantasy points per game this season, and Calvin Austin has an average of 8.5. There are no turnovers, so we'll look at their averages, their breakdowns, and their team receiving yards. Alex Pierce has 18.6% of the team's total receiving yards. Calvin Austin has 11.1% of the team's total receiving yards. And then ending up with our tight ends, you have Tyler Warren and Jonnu Smith. Warren has averaged 13.8 fantasy points per game this season, and Jonnu has averaged 6.9 per game. They have no turnovers, and then we'll switch over to the averages. And then look at the receiving share. You have Tyler Warren with that 23.7%, where he is the largest share of receiving yards on the team. And over here you have Jonnu Smith, who doesn't quite have as much. Unfortunately, it's kind of blanked out, but that's probably about that 7%, maybe 8%. So this game would suggest that it would go towards the Colts with this really good offensive ranking and this really bad defensive ranking from the Steelers. But it's in Pittsburgh, and with Aaron Rodgers on this terrible passing defense from the Colts, there may be something that Aaron Rodgers can do to tear them up and end up winning the game. So I guess we'll just have to see. So that's all I have for this game today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like and subscribe, and leave a comment on what else you might want to see in the future. Other than that, thank you so much for watching.